You've said things like black women are biologically different than white women.
Yes, they have different fertility windows. They have a higher rate of fertility complications, 50%
But there's
higher
no
rate.
scientific evidence to prove that a black woman and a white woman are genetically different, right? This is like...
What are you talking
No, they are.
about?
According, no,
I want you to look at this guy's body language. He genuinely believes that he is being punked. He unironically does not believe that the person in front of him is that uneducated. This type of conversation unironically reminds me of the time you had people debating with creationists or individuals that believe the earth was 6,000 years old. And they unironically would go around and they would say, look, the banana is shaped perfectly because God designed it to be shaped to fit in a human's hand. And what argument can you have with that person? Like, what more can you add when that's the way that they're trying to steer the conversation towards? Or they bring up the crocoduck. If evolution is real, where is the crocoduck? Or Bill O'Reilly, he basically said on air, tides go in, tides go out, science can't prove that, so therefore God did it. That was like the previous culture war, where you had the Bush administration that would cloak everything in religion. Like every single policy that they did, especially when they were restricting human rights and stuff, they would cloak it in a religious thing so you can't criticize it because then you're anti-religious. And then the young generation, they grew up, they were fed up with that shit, and they finally pushed back against the nonsense. Now you have a similar thing happening. Now you have individuals that, you know, they notice that a black woman is called a black woman because her skin looks black, and therefore something has to account for that. And that thing is obviously genetics. Like, if you're a father and you notice that your white wife is giving birth to a black child, then you don't even need to ask questions. You already know what happened. Like, your genetical material is incapable of creating people that would win the diversity award. And so, everyone knows this, right? Like, this is not some grand secret. This is not some deep scientific research that needs to be done. It's so obvious. And if your answer is like, well, science hasn't discovered, science has no evidence, well, the science is the problem then. Like, if I'm watching outside the window and there's a massive storm and the meteorologist tells me that it's sunny, then I don't give a shit how many scientific studies he has to back that. He can have all the fucking science in the world and even Dr. Fauci working on it. If my eyes look out the window and say it's sunny and the guy on the TV tells me there's a storm outside, I will always trust my eyes and this thing that leftists don't have, which is common sense. Now, this whole conversation about genetics already happened in the Soviet Union. It's interestingly how they don't teach you this in schools. It was called Lysenkoism. You see, during the Soviet Union, they really hated the Nazis, and so they hated everything Nazis touched. Even if something that the Nazis touched was true or false, they hated it regardless. And so they hated genetics. They believe that genetics is a Nazi thing. Unfortunately, however, genetics is an actual scientific field that can be applied in agriculture to huge degrees of success. But you have this guy called Lysenko, which was connected to the Politburo, and he basically came up with the thesis that, well, you know, plants, if you plant them closer together, just like people, then they can work together, right, for the greater good. They basically become like socialist plants. And so Lysenko published his study. Stalin enforced his study. If you disagreed with it or if you had a different take, you'd be fired. And eventually only pro-Lysenko people remained in the Russian academia. Turns out they created a famine. Now, when the famine was created, of course Lysenko wasn't to blame. It was, oh, people just didn't understand Lysenkoism or they didn't apply it properly. They upset the plants. Literally the same thing is happening here, right? Like, you have this lady, which is the enforcer of the state, and she is basically telling them not what she believes is true. She is repeating the buzzwords over and over to show that their ideology is not approved state dogma.
Literally, there are genes that code for their skin color. There are genes that...
Again, this is like government data. This is EMI, right? This is the National Institute of Health. This is the American Medical Association. Like, there is...
This is like in the medieval time period where a person just defers to the church. It's like, yeah, but this is what the priest said. And you're like, no, listen, like the divine right of kings is not mentioned in the Bible. Like Jesus never anointed the king to rule over us. And the other person goes, yeah, but this is not what I'm saying. This is what the church, what the institutions are saying. It's what the institutions. Like, so you kind of have just a normal conversation with the person anymore, right? Like, it's not what can we see around. Maybe we can audit the institutions. Like, it doesn't mean that the institution is 100% wrong. But like maybe it's wrong in some cases, and if the cases are so fundamentally obvious that everyone can see them, right? If you make the statement that there is no genetic difference between a black woman and a white woman, but we see the difference in the skin color, then obviously the science is wrong. And it's not necessarily wrong because they don't know. It can be wrong because it's corrupt. This is something else that leftists don't believe, you know? Like, they can think a politician is corrupt, they can think a police officer is corrupt, but for no reason whatsoever can a scientist be corrupt. They just don't understand, you know? Like, you can buy the science. You can literally purchase the science. Even though there's historical evidence of this happening time and time again, they just flat out refuse to admit that this can happen. And so they always say, it's like, well, it's the science. It's literally like it's coming from God. I mean, God said it, not me, you know. God said there's no genetic difference between a man and a woman. And so, I mean, what can I do? I'm just a lonely reporter. I don't have any opinion about these things whatsoever.
And that's a
Different
big
races.
problem, right?
No,
Because
no,
a lot of
no, there's no scientific
and that's
evidence
why
about
I
things
asked.
like IQ differences. Black people are genetically different from other populations.
And I'll say that again. There is no scientific evidence to prove that, right? And as people
No,
that
I'm sorry. I'm stating. Do you want to ask an AI if there's scientific evidence to prove that?
I want to ask.
No,
this
because
is
what you're
purely based
stating
on
is just factually incorrect. Humans are genetically diverse. It's not a bad thing that humans
I'm not
are
saying it's
genetically diverse.
I'm not saying it's a bad or a good thing. I'm saying there is no scientific evidence.
And I'm saying that is a factually.
he's saying that there is scientific
There
evidence.
is scientific evidence. There is
based on
overwhelming scientific
based
evidence.
on in this.
You know what she is actually doing? You think she's having a conversation, but in reality, she's casting spells. She's like a wizard. She's using the words in order to enforce compliance. And so, by repeating this chant over and over again, there is no scientific evidence, there is no scientific evidence, she is hoping to hypnotize people. This is a mind control spell that she is doing. And by the way, like, it is effective until it stops being effective. What I mean by this, imagine that you're in Salem with me right now during the witch hunt, and I accuse you of being a witch. You know that I'm being disingenuous. You also know that witches aren't real and they don't exist. And you also know that even if they did exist, you aren't one. However, my accusation is jeopardizing your life. Like, you're aware that the people around me that are primed to react to certain taboos are going to kill you. Right? Because I'm accusing you of being a witch. And so what she is basically doing here, by repeating the mantra, she's basically saying, I'm accusing you of being a racist. And she repeats it long enough, trying to terrorize these individuals. Like, if you keep doing this, you're going to lose sponsorships, you're going to lose your positions in academia, you're going to have average citizens go through your social media account and find things to be offended by and then try to cancel you. She's basically threatening them. This is what she's doing. It's not like she doesn't understand that there are genetic differences between races. I mean, the reason we categorize races are literally based on these differences, right? Like the concept of ethnicity, it means that two people of the same ethnicity fuck and they produce another person of that same ethnicity. How could you define these things, right? Like, if you genuinely, like, if there was no difference, you wouldn't even be able to spot them. Like, you wouldn't even be able to go to Africa and say, okay, well, there is something about these people that look different than Asians, right? Like, but they have to play this game of pretend. They don't like talking about it. They don't like bringing it up. And so they end up bullying what appears to be two young men that actually do not believe in the dogma. And they just reject all of that. They want to understand the world for what it is, not to understand the world through what is safe to understand it. Right? Because at the end of the day, the reason they do this is because it's not safe for the liberal order to talk about this, right? Like, if we notice differences, then it can lead to conversations that the liberals don't want to talk and they don't want to bring up. And look, like if you don't want to bring up a conversation, then be honest. And when the conversation comes up, then you discuss it. But to simply barricade against things that are so obvious and to force people to pretend that they're retarded, it can work with people that have something to lose and people that are afraid, but it can't work with young people. Because young people, they have nothing to lose. Like, they're at the start of their career. They usually get leeway from society. It's like, oh, well, they're young, they still have much to learn. We're not going to punish them too harshly for the transgression. And basically, this is how you get cultural changes. And the more you prevent young people from discussing something that they know is true, and it's obvious that it's true, the more likely it is that they will constantly want to discuss only about that topic. So anyway, let me know what you guys think. And as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.